It happened without warning, no tremor, no hint, not even a breath preparing the room for impact. 1 second, Meghan sat poised, polished, every word shaped with the precision of someone who spent years mastering the camera. She radiated calm authority, the kind that tells a room, "I'm in control," and then something shifted. It wasn't visible. Not exactly. You felt it first, like the air tightened, like the room exhaled and forgot how to inhale again. A single heartbeat of silence. And then it detonated. The laughter, sharp, sudden, cutting through the studio like a spark hitting gasoline. It wasn't warm laughter, not the kind that softens tension or understands mistakes. It was the other kind. The kind that starts small but spreads fast, the kind fueled by shock, disbelief, and something dangerously close to ridicule. Everyone froze. Even Meghan, for the briefest flicker. Her face went still, not obvious to the untrained eye, but enough for anyone who knows her. She blinked once, just once. But that single blink carried the weight of a whole internal collapse. It said, "Wait, did that really just happen?" Her statement, crafted, rehearsed, polished by a full PR team, was supposed to land like a royal decree. Instead, it blew up in her hands. The producers weren't ready either. No one was. Headsets crackled. Camera operators stiffened. Stage managers exchanged looks that said what none of them dared voice aloud. This isn't just awkward TV. This is a moment that will travel far beyond these walls, because humiliation in a studio is one thing. Humiliation tied to royal politics, that is a storm with international reach. The laughter rolled across the room, growing, tightening, feeding off itself. Meghan straightened, forcing her shoulders back, trying to reclaim even a fraction of the authority that had slipped from her grasp. But it was already gone. The room had taken control, and it wasn't giving it back. She pushed through her lines anyway. Voice clipped, sentences sharper than before, like someone trying to speak through clenched teeth. Her smile, tight, brittle, ready to crack. The laughter eventually died, but the silence that followed was somehow louder, heavier, exposing everything she was trying desperately to hide. This wasn't a stumble. It was a fracture. Something deeper had split open beneath her. And backstage chaos. Producers whispering. Assistants hunched over screens. Messages firing off to executives, to PR teams, to anyone who needed to be warned. We have a problem. Because by then, one rumor had already started to escape the studio. Meghan Markle had asked to leave the Invictus Games early. She'd flown home by private jet, bags, luggage, and all the optics that always fuel the narrative against her. The audience's reaction in studio was one hit. But the real blow was still coming. Because before that clip would hit the internet, before late-night hosts replayed the moment frame by frame, before journalists crafted headlines sharp enough to when the clip would reach the palace. And when it did, everything would change. Backstage, the air was already thick with panic, quiet panic. The kind people try to hide behind tight smiles and fast walking. Assistants moved like ghosts, avoiding Meghan's eyes. Producers whispered into headsets, voices low, clipped, urgent. Something had cracked open in that studio, and every single person felt the tremor. But the real earthquake was still minutes away, because no one, not Meghan, not the crew, not even the PR team already drafting statements, knew that the clip had slipped out. Not officially, not broadcast, not leaked by an insider. It escaped. A phone in the audience had caught the moment. The blink, the silence, the laughter, 10 seconds of footage. But 10 seconds was enough to light a match under an entire global narrative. Someone posted it. Someone else reposted it. Then another. And another. By the time Meghan stepped out of the studio doors, the internet had already decided that this wasn't just a bad moment. It was a symbol of a woman losing control of her story. Meghan's car pulled away from the building, tinted windows hiding her expression. But inside the vehicle, her jaw was tight. She stared straight ahead, her silence heavier than any words she could have spoken. Her phone buzzed. Once, twice, then non-stop. PR directors, agents, publicists, crisis managers, every message said the same silent thing. We need to talk. Now. But one notification froze her more than all the rest. A message from Harry. Short, barely a line, almost cold. We need to discuss what's happening. Not are you okay? Not I saw the clip. Not don't worry. We'll handle it. Just a distant, careful, razor-edged sentence that stung more than the studio laughter ever could, because Harry wasn't with her. He wasn't in the car. He wasn't flying home with her. He had stayed behind at the Invictus Games, and the world had already noticed, while Meghan's private jet photos were circulating first-class seats, designer luggage, and speculation brewing like wildfire. Harry was photographed smiling with athletes, taking pictures, shaking hands, doing everything a prince is expected to do. Two narratives were forming, and neither of them were good. Narrative 1. Meghan abandoned the games because things got too uncomfortable. Narrative 2. Harry stayed behind because even he didn't support her decision. The palace didn't have to say a word. The silence itself spoke volumes. Meanwhile, inside the private jet, Meghan sat alone, physically elegant, emotionally unraveling. The steady hum of the engine felt like the only thing holding her together. She scrolled through the clip again and again, searching for where it all went wrong. Was it her expression? Her tone? Her phrasing? Or was it simply the fact that people wanted her to fail? She wasn't sure anymore. She closed her eyes, inhaled, exhaled, trying to steady herself, but her phone buzzed again. A headline, then another, and another. Meghan Markle storms out early. Meghan flees Invictus after on-air embarrassment. Was Harry trying to distance himself? Each one sharper than the last, each one slicing deeper. But the final blow wasn't from the media. It wasn't from the internet. It wasn't even from Harry. It came from somewhere Meghan feared most inside the palace, because while Meghan was flying home, far from London, far from the games, far from the crowd that had laughed, a meeting was happening. A quiet, unofficial, off-the-record meeting. Advisors, communications directors, royal press liaisons, discussing one thing: how the crown should respond. Not publicly, not with an official statement, but with whispers, subtle moves, narrative shaping. And before Meghan's plane even landed, reporters were already being briefed with carefully chosen phrases. Sources say Harry was disappointed. Insiders claim Meghan acted impulsively. Some close to the prince felt blindsided. The palace never said it directly. They didn't have to. They simply opened the door and the world rushed in to fill the silence. By the time Meghan reached home, the narrative was no longer a ripple. It was a wave. A rising, accelerating wave with one message echoing through every headline, every podcast, every whisper on social media. Something between Meghan and Harry is cracking. She stepped into the quiet house, dark, still, heavy with absence. Harry wasn't there. His things were, but his presence wasn't. And that silence, that empty, echoing silence, was louder than the studio laughter, louder than the headlines, louder than every rumor tearing across the internet like a storm. Meghan stood there, gripping her phone, staring into the dark, knowing the truth she didn't want to admit. This wasn't just bad PR. This was personal. This was internal. This was a fracture between her and Harry, one that the whole world had just witnessed the beginning of. And the worst part, the real scandal hadn't even broken yet. The hours after Meghan arrived home were the longest of her life. Not because the house was quiet, but because it was too quiet. Quiet in a way that didn't feel peaceful. Quiet in a way that felt intentional. She walked through the rooms, heels soft against the polished floor, every step echoing through the empty space like a reminder. Harry wasn't home. There were no notes, no messages, no explanations. Just absence. And in that absence, the world outside was erupting. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing, notifications stacking on top of each other until the screen froze. Hashtags trending globally. Clips being slowed down, analyzed, dissected by strangers who didn't even know her but claimed they understood everything about her. But none of it rattled her as much as the single message she hadn't opened yet. The message from Harry. She stared at his name glowing on the screen, thumb hovering but not quite touching. What would his words be? Comfort? Frustration? Blame? Before she could open it, the door unlocked. Her breath caught. Harry stepped inside. Not hurried, not angry, not panicked, just quiet to quiet. He looked exhausted, eyes shadowed by hours of flashing cameras, handshakes, interviews, pretend smiles that never reached his eyes. But when he saw her standing in the middle of the hallway, something in his expression shifted, something she hadn't seen in months. Not anger, not sadness, but conflict. Like he was fighting a war inside himself that even he didn't know how to describe. He set his bag down slowly, measured, controlled, almost rehearsed. "Harry?" Meghan started, voice soft, but he didn't answer. Not yet. He walked past her, into the living room, where the glow of the television lit up the walls. News channels played the clip on loop, her blink, the laughter, the freeze-frame humiliation now weaponized by the world. Meghan turned the TV off immediately, but it didn't matter. The silence that followed was heavier than the noise. "Why didn't you tell me you were leaving?" Harry finally asked. There it was. The first crack. Meghan swallowed. "I didn't think that's exactly the problem, Meg." His tone wasn't loud. Quiet, steady, but with a sharp edge beneath it. "You didn't think?" She stepped closer. "I needed space. It was too much." The reaction, the cameras, the pressure. "I was under pressure too," he said. "And I stayed." Those words hit harder than any headline. Meghan's voice trembled. "Harry, you weren't the one being mocked on live television." "No," he said. "But I was the one trying to hold everything together while you left." The room filled with tension so thick it almost felt like the air couldn't move. She tried to steady herself. "You think I abandoned you?" Harry didn't answer. His silence was answer enough. Outside, paparazzi lights flashed through the windows like lightning. Inside, two people who had fought the world together were now struggling to fight for each other. Meghan sat down slowly, hands clasped, knuckles turning pale. "Harry, people are attacking me everywhere. Online, on TV, in the press. I thought coming home was the safest option." "Safe for who?" he asked quietly. "For you, or for us?" That question sliced right through her. Meghan looked down. She had no answer, not one that wouldn't make things worse. Harry sighed, rubbing his temples. "Do you know what they're saying now? About Invictus? About me? About why I stayed?" She knew. Of course she knew. Every headline was a dagger twisting deeper. Did Harry stay behind to distance himself? Prince chooses duty over Meghan? Is the rift real? The world didn't care about the truth. The world cared about the story. Harry walked to the window, staring out at the flashing lights. "The palace is speaking to the press." Meghan's head snapped up. "What?" "They're not using official statements," Harry continued. "They're using sources, whispers, insiders. The same old tactics." Her stomach dropped. This wasn't a scandal anymore. This was a setup. "What are they saying?" she whispered. Harry hesitated. And that hesitation was all Meghan needed to understand. "They're implying," he said slowly, "that you acted emotionally, impulsively, that your decision to leave wasn't stable." Her breath shattered. "Not unwise, not difficult, not pressured. No, unstable." They were painting her as the problem again. Just like before. Just like always. Meghan stood, hands trembling, anger and heartbreak merging into something sharp and electric. "They're trying to isolate me," she whispered. Again, Harry turned toward her. "They're trying to isolate us. But it's working, Meg. Look at what's happening." For the first time, she saw it. Not just the scandal, not just the headlines, not just the laughter, but the growing distance between them, a slow, quiet drift that had finally become visible. She stepped closer, voice barely above a whisper. "Harry, are you pulling away from me?" He didn't answer immediately. He looked at her, really looked at her, like he was seeing the woman he loved and the situation he feared colliding all at once. Then, slowly, "I'm trying not to." That single sentence was more terrifying than any rumor, because it wasn't a promise. It wasn't a reassurance. It wasn't a defense. It was a confession. A raw, painful truth wrapped in honesty. Meghan felt tears sting her eyes, but she held them back. She couldn't break now. Not in front of cameras. Not in front of headlines. Not in front of him. Harry, she whispered. We can fix this. He closed his eyes. I hope so. Hope, not certainty. And hope wasn't enough to stop what came next. A new notification buzzed on Meghan's phone. She looked down, another headline. But this one wasn't like the others. This one wasn't speculation. This wasn't analysis. This wasn't rumor. This was a leaked data and internal palace memo. One sentence highlighted at the top. Prepare for announcement regarding separation of roles for the Duke and Duchess. Separation of roles. Not divorce. Not separation. But the first step toward both. Meghan's heart dropped. Harry's face went pale. The scandal wasn't the humiliation. It wasn't the flight. It wasn't the meltdown. The real scandal was this. Someone inside the palace wanted to break them. And they had just made their first move. Everything from this point forward would be a war. And tonight was only the beginning. If you've made it this far, then you already know one thing. This story isn't slowing down. In fact, everything we've uncovered so far is only the surface. The real battle, the silent one happening behind palace walls, PR boardrooms, private emails, and whispered agendas is still unfolding in real time. And the moment it breaks, you're going to want to be here to see it first. Because what comes next won't just shift the public narrative. It's going to expose the power structures, the alliances, and the decisions that will shape Meghan and Harry's future forever. So here's what you need to do right now. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure notifications are on, and stay locked in. Every hour, a new leak comes out. Every day, another source steps forward. And every time that happens, the path forward for both Meghan and Harry twists again. You don't want to miss the breaking point, the moment everything snaps and the truth finally hits the world unfiltered. Stick with me, because the next chapter of this story isn't just big, it's explosive. And trust me, you'll want to witness every second of it.